Again, my name is Christine Dale, President of the Board. I'd like to welcome you to our community engagement. One of our objectives for the Board and the administration is to have more opportunities to engage the community on really important topics in the district. And our first one tonight is on safety. You'll see that there's a lot of things that our district has been doing and has plans to continue to do. And so I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Douglas and the Safety Committee so you can hear more about the safety efforts within the district. Thank you.
Take two. So nice job. Thank you, Ms. Dale. Ladies and gentlemen, as your superintendent, one of the things as we gather, we want to also put some names and faces together with everybody, but for any evening presentation, it's very hard for some people to get out, but when they do dedicate their time, especially every month for our meetings and so forth, the Board of Education has always been readily available. I'd like to introduce, as you've seen, Ms. Christine Dale, our Board President is here, Mr. Brian Lynch, who is our Board Vice President down front. We have Ms. Liz Odell Welling, who is a new board member this year, and her companion, Gail, is hidden, but I know he needs a bow. And then also one of our board members, Mr. Kevin Adams, his new board member card expired last year, so he's doing well in his second year. So I want to thank you for your time, as well as some of our other board members had other previous commitments. So on top of it, ladies and gentlemen, we have a bunch of presenters here tonight. So if I'd ask them to stand and just wave to the camera so people can put a name and face. Our directors of our safety committee for the district, first is Ms. Caitlin DeFilippo. She's our Director of Human Resources, District Safety Team Chair. Mr. Michael Coughlin, Director of Facilities, District Safety Team Chair. Our middle school principal, Mr. Ron Holloway. Our Gardner Elementary School Principal, Patrick Patterson. Big Flats Elementary Principal, Ms. Elizabeth Skepchura. A representative from our Committee on Special Education Chair, grades 5 through 12, Mr. Ryan Collins. Our Assistant Director of Transportation and Equipment Service Manager, Mr. Jason Johnson. He helps call snow days, everybody. In addition, Chief Michael Suey from the Horseheads Police Department. Also representing our fire teams here, Chief Art Sullivan from the Horseheads Fire and Rescue Department. I also know that other members of our fire department, Mr. Sean McNermott is here. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we also have our school resource officers are here in the back. Right now I see, is Paul Campbell here tonight? Okay. Steve Cronin, I see him over there. Also, Mr. Howard Lightman. Mr. Scott McGrain. Mr. Dan West. And Mr. Mike Wheeler. These individuals, as well as our County Sheriff's Department and also our local state trooper barracks, have been all instrumental in a lot of the items that we are going to cover tonight. They are also part of our safety team in Reach Out. Tonight, as we said, we wanted to start off by having something that is always near and dear to everybody's heart because of what we deal with each and every day, and that is our students of our community. A lot of people know that we care about safety, but they may not know everything we do or some of the new things that we're doing. So we wanted to try to put some of that out on the preventative, proactive, and responsive nature. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Caitlin DeFilippo. So thank you for coming out, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. So we do have a team of panelists here. We're going to be presenting on a number of different topics. To start us off, I would like to introduce you to what the district and building safety teams are and what we're charged with doing. So there are two different types of safety teams. There's a district level safety team, and that is composed of both district level and building level administrators, staff from our facilities department, nurses, teachers, our SROs, our healthcare benefits specialists, as well as Tony Stager, who is our health and safety specialist that we're pleased to have here in the district 5 days a week. He's from BOCES and he's very knowledgeable about safety, all things safety. We have a district plan, which is posted, a district safety plan, as well as there are separate building safety plans. So the district safety plan, you may have noticed, that's posted on our website. It's a multifaceted response plan to help us prepare for potentially dangerous situations. Building plans are private, and they are developed in-house in all the buildings, and they are shared annually with all of our local first responders. So they're aware and can help us both develop those and fine-tune them where needed. The function of our building and district safety team, so what we do is we really review and guide several aspects of safety at Horseheads. Everything from looking at accident reports that employees suffer at work, and figuring out where we can adjust those and prevent accidents at work, as well as debriefing on safety drills that have happened in the district. We learn, we have professional learning. Tony Stager brings us topics, Mike Coggan brings us topics to learn about best practices on everything ranging from playground safety to what to do after debriefing from lockdown for armed intruders and how to prepare for those situations. We try to make connections with key community members that might be involved in specific aspects of our safety plan. And like I said, we do have all of our SROs on the safety team, as well as New York State Trooper. And we hear what they have to say, and they're valued members around the table. So that's an overview of what our building and safety teams do and are, and I'm going to invite Jason Johnson up to come and talk about transportation.
Well, good evening, everyone. Transportation, it's almost priority that our children are safe, no matter where they go to or from school. We have a lot of improvements on transportation, as in the most up-to-date camera systems that we can have on our buses for safety and security. We have implemented on all our buses now large numbers that can be read from the sky on all our buses. We have the most up-to-date cameras or two-way radio systems on our buses as well, so we can communicate back to the schools and anywhere we need to. And all the safety technologies that we have on the buses, they are all up to date as well. We're always improving where we can and to make, again, the buses the safest mode of transportation.
Hi everyone, I'm Patrick Patterson, the principal at Gardner Road, and this is... I'm Ron Holloway, the middle school principal, and we also have Chief Sui from the Horseheads Fire Department, or Police Department. So we are talking about our school resource officer program, so do you want to start and give an overview of that?
Evening, I'm Chief Sui from Horseheads Police Department. This year we took the initiative and we ended up putting extra SROs in place, one for each school in our district. I was asked to do that by the school district, and so we have an SRO, retired officer, law enforcement officer in each school. We all participate in the safety committee meetings, and we're just trying to ensure our primary mission as SROs is the safety of the children in the buildings, and we work hand in hand with all these nice people and share information, and our goal is to essentially provide a safe environment for the kids. What these guys are.
So I've had the opportunity to work with all but one of our current SROs, both as a high school administrator and as the middle school principal. I think the value of the school resource officer program, number one, is to show law enforcement in a positive light for our kids. They get so much negative press in the media. It's nice to build kind of that positive role model for our students to see that, you know, they're not always the bad guys. I'll speak for Officer West because I work with him directly now. Constantly has kids in his office, both on the middle school side and the intermediate school side, and just working through the daily challenges of being a middle school and intermediate school student. I think the other thing that's important that we see is just providing that sense of security, not only for the folks in our building, but for the community to understand that we have trained law enforcement professionals right on our building. I know we always think about the active shooter drill, but there's all kinds of other things that go on to the school resource officer program. I think of some of the mental health emergencies we have with our kids. They have that direct access to the crisis team. If we have a medical emergency in the building, we have that direct link between the emergency response systems. Other things is just the knowledge and experience that they bring to the table. Caitlin talked about our district and building safety teams. They are part of both of those teams, and the knowledge and the experience that they bring helps us prepare. I'm going to talk about preparation and planning for emergencies a little bit later, but having that understanding and background with the guys that work with us is super important. Patrick?
So I'd like to echo everything that Chief Sui and Principal Holloway shared. Having the school resource officer in the elementary building is very fortunate. Having that extra added trained eye is looking around the building during drop-off, during pickup, keeping an eye on what about this entrance? Is everything monitored correctly? So Officer Wheeler, I'm talking to him every day and hearing what his insight is. So it's very helpful, his interaction with students, having him build that positive relationship with students, walking them around in the cafeteria, out on the playground. Having that visibility is great. They also work in partnership with our social workers and help out in other areas if we need to make home visits and stuff like that. So just having the school resource officers there to support anyone in the building for whatever reason, it's that extra added security that we appreciate. And now is Mrs. Gaptura and Mr. Coughlin for school entry.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. As we were talking about safety, it really begins from the minute we arrive on campus. It doesn't matter if you arrive at 6 a.m. as the first cleaner does, or any time in between before the students arrive. Our doors are locked the entire day. So that is certainly going to begin our security process. Once the doors are the students arrive, we have the doors open by adults to let the students into the building. And then after the students are in, there's only single entry entrance, which you must buzz through at the main entrance. We have no doors open during the school hours. And Mr. Conlon here is going to talk a little bit about our after school and evening hours.
So we have that single point entry during the day and all doors are secured. From then we use a electronic programming scheduling system for the district. For every building each night's looked at for activities that are going to go on for that evening. And we do look a little bit different. We get to some of the activities of the evening. People elect to come versus the students coming during the day being mandated. But they are scheduled on either by the custodian that's on, and the part of the security is the custodian in the evening for these events to pick up the door security. So they are programmed when we do bring them back. For instance, most elementaries, it's not till 6 p.m. ever before those doors are open, depending on activities. And then it'll depend on what those activities are on for that evening. And the moment they're done, the building's secured back, locked back down to its system. And before the cleaners actually leave for the night, it's to secure that building, making sure it's safe for the students coming in. And I think it goes for weekend activities too. This place is awful busy throughout the district with activities going on, but all those doors are monitored at all times.
We're now going to turn it over to Ryan Collins to talk to you about the incoming Raptor system. Mr. Collins.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa.
So I am a CSE chairperson here at the district. I'm also a proud parent of an elementary age student for the district. I had the opportunity to introduce the Raptor software system. This is a new visitor management system, which is going to add to the procedures that we already have when someone's entering our building during the school day. This new software system that we're going to be introducing will allow us to do background checks. It talks to the systems that New York State holds, so we can be alerted to anybody who shouldn't be gaining access to our schools or be around our children. This system is going to add to, as I was indicating earlier, the systems that are already in place, like the single point of entry and things like that. But it will also then produce a badge and a name tag that the visitor can wear. That's going to have their name. It's going to have a picture on it, and then who or where they're going to be visiting. So are they there for the nurse? Are they there for a different staff meeting or teacher meeting, a CSE meeting? So that's going to be able to let anybody in the building identify them. People will gain access by utilizing their government-issued ID. Most of the time this will be a driver's license. And just a quick scan with our clerical team up front will be able to produce that. So this is something that we're looking to get the equipment on site later this spring and then train our staff before then we can implement it fully. Next, I believe that we're going to talk about some capital project design. And for that, Mr. Maikawa.
And Mr. Douglas. All right, so our project design, we touch security at all phases of all of our design. We look at what's the newest out there. One thing about safety, it's never done. It's ongoing. We continue to work on it. We work with the Board of Education, with the building administrators, and our designs, and they can go through things that the projects we've done. We were fortunate through this capital project to get the infrastructures recently, about 5 years ago, and a district-wide tech plan that allowed us to bring a lot of the technologies out there, and IP phone systems. I think currently throughout the district we have well over 600 cameras, real time. We needed the backbone to run them. They were designed into them systems. We talked a little bit about the programming on the doors, electrifying the doors. It's not human error to unlock a door, it's not the keys to be out there. Those are all tied in through capital project stuff. We also, we have a lot of contractors. Some might be talking during this project stuff that we're working on that we have, and it's been year-round. I assure you all contractors on site have gone through a New York State background check, just like all our employees. So we're ensuring that we have our students safe as we're doing this capital work throughout there. One big one at the high school recently to just bring up when we were finishing up is bringing up, this is a large building, area of refuge, brought up to the 2022 standards at the time we were going through there. And this will be a great safety component for the building to be brought up. We are always compliant, but allows us this opportunity then as we're going through there. So I'm going to let Dr. Douglas talk a little bit on some of the safety things that we're working, but I just assure you all through capital projects and designs, whether it be at the high school, middle school, or elementaries, we're working on it. Just as much as the academic sides that we need to make these rooms, security is a big part of it. Dr. Douglas?
Yeah, capital project design, thanks for the Board of Education, the community with our first two projects. You are starting to see some of that come to fruition here at the high school. We're getting ready to ship to the elementary schools because when these buildings were built, they did not have the design process in place that would consider what's going on in today's educational society. Lockout chambers so that we can make sure no one gains entry, but we can have dialogue back and forth. Each of our buildings will have that, as well as visual sight lines within the building, interior, exterior for emergency response, easy access for our emergency teams as well, if there is ever an issue or concern, whether it's medically related or legally related for law enforcement. That cooperation, that design is a process. And because of that, over time, it will take us these three projects to update all of our district buildings and facilities in that. As Mr. Coughlin said about the security, we have a great security system, but it has to even get more enhanced. lighting systems, our fields, our parking lots are all being updated to keep in mind that that constant update also allows us to constantly review our safety needs as well. The Raptor system that was talked about, just to cover that is something that will be able to help in helping individuals that we want people in the building, but during the day when it's most critical, we need people in the building that are absolutely supposed to be there so people can clearly know that they are there. Other than that, there wouldn't be entry into the building. So these are all little things that we have to put into place over time, and that is something I think that will help, especially at the elementary schools. Just like in transportation, we are getting ready to roll out a GPS system that allows our students to use an ID, log on when they get on the bus, and parents will be able to see as close to real-time data where that bus is, where the child is, as well as it gives us who's on, who's off, without just saying, oh yes, Johnny and Sally did get on, but I can't remember. That's hard when you're dealing with 60, 70 kids all of a sudden. So our safety and design concepts go throughout. The last piece for the interagency piece is going to be Chief Sullivan. I think it's Chief Sullivan, Sue, Mike Suey, and Caitlin. But as they are coming up, I just want to mention that one of the things that we are doing, and it's not rolled out yet, but it's on behalf of the county. It was something that after the initiatives in Buffalo, you also saw Uvalde, is that we deal with a lot of different agencies. And the county as well as the state in each area is looking at how do we deal with that. And that's a big piece of that interagency cooperation. You can see Horseheads Police Department. But we have a great relationship with the Chemung County Sheriffs, Steuben County Sheriffs, New York State Police, but that coordination is what's coming out as a threat assessment management system, or TAMS team. That is in the process of being worked on by our county executive, the county team, and I think we're probably one of the leaders in the county. Our district has no problem being the first line of defense to help work with them, because we'll also get the benefit out of that too, to keep all of us safe. Our students, which are our #1 priority, but our communities, which is our second priority. So those coming up on other interagency, I hope that helps to let you know a lot of things that we're doing. Please, everybody.
All right, I can't stress enough how much interagency cooperation that we have, and not just with the gentlemen that are here behind me. You know, we are very involved with the county, with the state, Chemung County Public Health Emergency Preparedness Committee. We're active and sit on that committee. Fire departments, EMT agencies. We are a Red Cross site that we work with there, that on an annual we go over for emergencies out in the community, not just within, but working with them in a partnership. We did an awful lot with the health department. You know, we just went through a really, in our lifetime, who would talk going through COVID. We're right on the countywide board. We got guidance from them, keeping the students safe, getting the latest and greatest. We did test sites. We did the shot sites, so we're very, very involved with the county on that end. And we sit on the Chemung County, as Dr. Douglas was saying, on the threat assessment. I'd like to really have the gentleman behind me talk a little bit about our interagency cooperation and how they feel comfortable in our schools, how we keep them up to date on what we're doing with construction, safety protocols, and many other things. So Mike, Carter.
Little arm wrestle for it. Mike back here again. Cooperation is a key to delivering good services as far as for our school district. What's unique about, well, it's not unique about our SRO program or anything, but all the SROs come from the various agencies represented in our county. We got retired sheriff's deputies, retired troopers, myself, and a couple of them are retired EPD guys, retired Horseheads guys. We bring with ourselves a skill set, but we are working with other SROs in the county and agencies that we have a history with, a good history. That extends into
our relationships with the fire department and, various things. So I just want to, Mike really wrapped it up pretty good, and so did Dr. Douglas. It's just that we got a unique group of people here that have a real lot of dedication, and you should be proud of them. I sure am. Art,
Thank you. I'm Art Sullivan, Chief of the Horseheads Fire Department, and hopefully I'm speaking for Sean McMurray of Town and Country also. One of the unique situations here tonight, though, is that our fire departments are all volunteer. And time the alarm goes off to a alarm center, then to 911, and then dispatch to us. 7 to 10 minutes would be a very good time for our equipment and personnel to come. Now, you might say that's a long time, but because of being volunteer, obviously our people do not live at the station, they live at their homes and have their other activities. We're very fortunate to have very dedicated volunteers and do a very good job. Saying that, the cooperation between the school district and the fire departments is very good. Over the years, we went through systems and asking for numbering of all the doors, so we have a direct location, and we always get a call back saying it's door such and such, the alarm, it may be a pull box, it might be a heat or smoke detector. We get that information right away, and that helps us prepare as we get here. Now, on evacuation of the students, sometimes taking the students all outside is not the most safe for them in inclement weather. And there's a lot of common sense by all the supervisors and the administrators of the school system of how to handle that situation. Say if the alarm is in one side of the building, and being here at the high school being so large, they'll evacuate to the other side of the building. In inclement weather, they might be close to the door. Now, I can't give permission to do that. Again, it's common sense and it works out fine. During the construction period, we had numerous meetings of what's going on. We dealt with 2 different fire alarm systems here that talked to each other, but didn't. It was very frustrating at times, but it all worked out. And again, the safety of the students was always important to us and to the people here at the school and all the schools. And I can't ask for a better cooperation of that time. So, thank you.
Yeah, so we really do not only take the approach that we need to keep our students safe, but we also recognize that we need to partner with our community as well. And we view ourselves as helpers. So aside from the cooperation you see with other municipal authorities, we do partner with and know that we will be a help and an assist with the Red Cross, with the assisted living facilities in our community. We know if there's an emergency, we have agreements where we could provide busing, we could provide sources of refuge if that's needed, and we take that responsibility seriously.
So Ryan and I are going to talk to you a little bit about social-emotional support and the importance of that and how that impacts our students. So at Horsehead Central School District, I'm very proud and very appreciative of our Board of Education and our school district's approach to students' social-emotional learning. We take a very proactive and preventive and responsive approach with supporting our students. We teach to the social-emotional learning standards, and our social workers and our counselors provide social-emotional support, both proactively and, of course, when students are in crisis. We strive to have a welcoming and affirming environment for all, and, of course, the communication that we have with school is crucial for transparency and ensuring the safety of all.
We do have some teams that are put together and some trainings. The first one I'd like to highlight is our crisis team. Each building has a different crisis team. There are, from time to time, unfortunate events that happen, whether it's in school or out of school. where a student or a family experiences some tragedy or unfortunate event. Those crisis teams are able to respond to support those affected by the tragedy in many different ways, offering all sorts of supports for those unique situations that do arise. So we're proud that we are able to support the families in that light. Therapeutic crisis intervention. That is a Cornell University program that has been developed, a multidisciplinary approach to de-escalating students who are in crisis. A lot of the work focuses on prevention and setting conditions so students would never actually reach a point of crisis. And we're very fortunate to have 2 trainers in district, actually 3 trainers in district, that are able to pass along this knowledge and this programming to many of our staff. So we are constantly going through updates and refreshers and always looking for ways that we can best support students. The character education model is something that we do roll out to our students where we're stressing positive character traits. There are 6 of those. They are respect, responsibility, citizenship, caring, fairness, and trustworthiness. These are highlighted in activities that the students engage in throughout the academic school year, and they touch upon them and are threaded through the different learning aspects of their day. So we're quite proud of some of these programs that we have.
We'll now turn it over to Caitlin and Chief Sue, I believe.
We wanted to just let you know about a couple of means where you could contact the district if you need to, if there's a situation. Obviously, and Chief Suey will speak to this, but if it's an emergency, call 911. If something's on fire, if it's that sort of emergency, please don't call the Safe Schools line. Please don't post about it on Facebook. If there's a student who's in a sincere, acute crisis, don't call the Safe Schools line. Call 911. But if there are issues that you would like to report, a concern, a rumor, a bullying incident, or another sort of safety incident that may not be as acute as need to call 911, please use our Safe School line. We do take these calls and take this information anonymously, and it is as confidential as we can keep it. It is monitored 24/7. And even when school is not in session, these lines are open. They're received by school administrators instantly, and let me tell you, they are definitely followed up. It's not just one school administrator who gets them, so if somebody is unable to be with their device, rest assured it will be received. If you do need to call to report something, as much detail as possible really helps us. And Safe Schools line versus see something, say something. The real difference is the Safe School lines, they're just a traditional phone number. See something, say something. That's really a student-focused initiative that we have in our secondary schools, and there are QR codes around the buildings that students can scan and submit reports through that. So that's really a vehicle that students are used to using to report these types of situations.
What she said, Caitlin did a really good job on that. Like anything, we're noticing you've got a lot of different agencies, a lot of different training skill sets behind this to provide a safe environment for the kids and the adults in these facilities. Communication is the big one, and we've discovered the hard way, and in various examples, how important it is. If it's an emergency, something's immediate, 911. Comm Center works with us, works with everybody in the county for this, with all the agencies. It's just establishing protocols and what we do in the worst case scenarios. The county's working on a threat assessment model of some sort called TAMS. We're completely supportive of that initiative. It's still in the, implementation stage and research and before the big rollout, but anything that would get information to the proper people, any kind of concerns, and redundancy in communication is a good thing. But we're discovering that with everything going on and the what the cool thing with the SROs, I'm a cop, so I come from that perspective, is they get information differently than probably the school administrators do sometimes. So, everybody's got a different thing, and different kids go to different people, but as a whole, it all comes together. So if everything's working good, and we have built a good relationship, it's easier. So it's common sense, like Chief Sullivan said with the fire department, but it ends up working pretty darn good. So, and what's really cool about working with this group of people, and I'm new to this, is that everybody's really not very selfish about it. We're just helping each other out get through this to provide a safe environment. And that's what I got to add. Thank you, Ken.
So next up, we are going to have some administrators come up to talk about what our safety drills look like, what types of different safety drills we do, and what types of situations those happen.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and talk about the proactive drills that we do in our schools with our staff and students. At the onset of our presentation, Mrs. Filippo talked about how our district safety plans are public, our building safety plans are private. So we can't go into the specific details on what these look like in each of the specific buildings, but we have building safety teams that create procedures and protocols that we practice with our students and staff. And our building safety teams do a great job making sure that our students know what to do and our staff knows what to do. And our building safety teams meet many times throughout the year, and we talk about how we're going to drill some of these drills, and then we come back and review and say, what did we learn from these drills, and what can we do better? And what can we teach our students, and what can we teach our staff? Ultimately, for the safety of all of our students. So, and the nice thing having the SROs in the building, they also come in and they help give their advice and input on that as well. So some of the drills that we go through, naturally fire drills, we do them throughout the year. We do keep a log of fire drills of how often we do them. We have a goal of how quick we want to get students out of the building for a fire drill. And the thing that, again, we try to do different scenarios to keep our students and staff thinking freshly, what do I do in this situation to get out of the building? In the fall, the local fire department always comes to our school and talks about ways to get out of our homes safely. We talk about with our students, what's the first way out, what's the second way out, what's the third way out. So we're always trying to get them with our staff to be thinking about how to be safe. I'm going to skip the lockdown. I'm going to come back to that one shortly. We also do bus drills. Our transportation department does a great job. They come over and they do this in two different ways. One, they do bus safety. So about 3 times a year, they come over and all of our classes go out onto the buses. And the bus drivers talk about how do we stay safe on the buses. What they also do is in the morning, they, as the students are getting dropped off, they talk about what do we do if there's an emergency on the bus. And they actually practice getting out of the bus in a different way than they typically do. So the transportation department does a great job helping us with that. We also practice evacuation drills, and those could be initiated in a variety of ways. From any one of our drills, it could lead to an evacuation drill. So our evacuation drills are off-site. We typically take our students to another location. And again, I can't get into specific details of where those are or what we do, but we get our whole school, everyone, to another location. And then when we get to those locations, we talk about how do we practice reunifying with parents. And there's so many people that would play a role in that. What does transportation do to help traffic flow? What does the local police department do to help make sure that all the students get in and out safely and get reunified with their parents? So we practice those things. Again, we try to work through different scenarios so we can learn from that. For pre-K through K through 6th grade, we also do practice an emergency go-home drill. So let's say we had to leave in the middle of the day. Where would our students go? So all of our parents fill out what their go-home plan is, and our students practice getting on that bus and practice figuring out how would we go home in case we had to leave real quick. And that could happen in a lot of different ways. Maybe there's something, again, maybe there was one of the other drills that led to having to go home earlier. Maybe there's a weather situation. We also do severe weather drills in the building too. How do we get away from windows? How do we make sure that we're away from doors, keep ourselves safe for anything falling? So, and again, with all these drills, the goal is to help our students know what to do. Our students do great with these drills. They don't become scared, they don't become upset. It's always a learning experience, and we always reflect and celebrate how they're doing a great job. One of the drills that Mr. Holloway is going to get into in a little bit, lock in, lock out, lock down. So a lockdown drill is also one that we practice multiple times through the year with different scenarios, one that we hope that we never have to use. And I think that's a safety drill that most parents that I hear are nervous about. And our students, again, they do really do a good job. They know what to do. Our students are well trained. You would think a kindergartner would be scared and nervous to practice a lockdown drill, but our teachers know how to keep our students safe. They know how to keep them calm. And we focus on those details, on let's just follow the procedures we have, and then make sure that we're just listening and following our protocols. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Holloway. He's going to get into some more details for our 3 other drills.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. There we go. All right, I think I am the last presenter before questions and answers, so we are coming near to the end. I'll try not to make this too awful lengthy. I think what hopefully you have seen tonight that as a district and as a community team, we spend a lot of time preparing for emergencies, preparing for drills that we hope we never have to use. One of the things that I've had the opportunity, the district has spent really a lot of money sending many of our administrators to trainings. I've been trained, as well as many of the administrators in here, FBI, Secret Service, Homeland Security, the state police, local law enforcement. So we've been to a host of trainings. And when we go to these trainings, we're always trying to pick up little details that we then bring back to our district safety team, to our building safety teams, to apply to our procedures. I think Mr. Coughlin said it well, that safety is always a process. We're never there. Every time something happens, we reflect on that. We take a look at, what went well? What do we need to improve upon? I think as a parent, Mr. Collins mentioned he's a parent. I have 2 boys in the district as well. And I think as a parent, you want to know that the folks that are taking care of your kids know what's going on when an emergency arises. And hopefully what you've heard tonight, that at least we do have a clue most of the time. So looking at some of these drills, hold in place. This one's typically used for usually a medical emergency. We may have, some sort of a gym accident, somebody sprains an ankle, could be something more serious. Hopefully I never have to deal with this, but one of our veteran teachers has a heart attack and we need to get EMS in here. Really the goal of the hold in place is to make sure that staff and students remain away from the scene so the emergency personnel can do their work, get the scene cleared, get the person that is in a medical emergency, get them the help that they need without distractions of staff and students around. Other things, at the middle school we've used this in the past, which actually led to an evacuation. We had a construction accident. One of the construction workers many years ago hit a hot water pipe. It flooded the entire bottom floor of the building. So we have steam, we have hot water all over the place. So we call the hold in place to keep students from passing between periods while we could isolate it and then evacuate them out around that particular situation. So there's various things that may be used for. Typically, students usually in that case, students are not in danger of anything. Usually somebody else is having a medical emergency, we just want to keep them away. Lockout, we had some experience with that just, last week, 2 weeks ago, at the intermediate school and middle school. So the lockout essentially is Ms. Skeptura said, our buildings are locked with the exception of dismissal and entry. They're locked all day long. So really the only thing that changes in that lockout is we are preventing people from coming in. With some minor exceptions. We do have law enforcement at our doors during that lockout situation. So if a student has a medical appointment, we can clear the parent to release them during that lockout. but it is under strict conditions with law enforcement administrators checking those things in. The lockout really is when there's an emergency outside of the school building. There's something going on outside that we don't want brought into the middle school. The standoff that happened basically in the intermediate school playground a couple of weeks ago was an example. There was really never any danger to our students during that time. We mentioned the SRO program. Our SRO heard that over the radio. He immediately hightailed it over to the intermediate school, got the kids off the playground prior to actually probably law enforcement arriving on scene, because he heard that and got back. So that communication with our SROs, we get real-time information that obviously they're able to share with us. Some of the information they can as administrators, it's law enforcement information, but they do share that in real time so that we're able to manage whatever the emergency is really in real time. One of the things that we hear about is you should have communicated that sooner. And oftentimes we wish we could have communicated sooner, but what we need to realize is that when there's an emergency taking place, our number one priority is your kids. So we make sure that the scene's controlled, the kids are safe. We develop the communication, usually behind the scenes. We're working with Dr. Douglas, Sue Parazola, Mr. Gill, our assistant superintendent, and other administrators to prepare that communication in conjunction with law enforcement so that when we do communicate, we're communicating accurately and the most up-to-date information. So sometimes it does appear that that communication is a little bit delayed, but rest assured our number one priority is your kids. And then obviously the last one there is a lockdown. I've had experience with every single one of these particular procedures with the exception of the lockdown. And that's one that we hope we never have to deal with. That is the immediate threat inside of the building. And as Mr. Patterson said, our kids are very well trained. We can't go into specific details on what that lockdown looks like, but when we call a lockdown, I can speak for the middle school and the intermediate school specifically. When we call that lockdown, our kids are locked down within seconds. I mean, it is silent, halls are clear, and kids know exactly what to do. We train our students at the beginning of the year so that in the event, say a substitute comes in, they have copies of our emergency procedures, but they don't have the same level of training that our teachers do. That's why we train everybody. In the event of an emergency, you never know who's going to step up and be the leader in that situation. So the more people that are trained, the more people that are available to step up and handle that emergency. And just to kind of close, I think that the biggest thing that we need to understand in the event of an emergency, we prepare, we train. Scenarios never happen the way you prepare and train. So flexibility, being able to adapt on the moment, draw on your training, draw on the procedures that we have, and then adapt those to the specific situation that we're dealing with at the time. So I think that concludes the presentation at this time, I believe, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Douglas to wrap up.
Thank you, Ron and Patrick. I just wanted to step in just to emphasize something, and as I'm talking, I'd ask our panel to please come forward. Ladies and gentlemen, what Ron said about the most tragic part, which would be a lockdown, is so true, but it's also true about everything else we do. There's a Latin phrase, in loco parentis. That is what schools operate. And loco parentis means in place of the parent. This is the hardest part because, look, I can tell you, just between me and my wife, when all of a sudden the lockout went in place, guess who's trying to call my phone right off the bat? What's going on? I can't talk to her just like I can't talk to you. But in loco parentis, my child's in that school and every one of your children are my child at that point. Just like it is for our administrators and that. And I know that doesn't give everybody solace at that point because they want to know how and how to help. But know that if we're not communicating, it's not because we're not going to or we don't want to. It's probably because our first priority, like Ron said, absolutely first and foremost, we're working with all of our agencies and we're working to keep our children safe. Which across the country, you may see lapses in that. We practice that, and I can't guarantee everything because we can't guarantee every single situation. But I know my team, I know the resources we have. We go sometimes when we're not supposed to because it's our children. I remember we had a lockdown because a child called it in one of our buildings. I'm not supposed to go, but they're my children. I go. My assistant superintendent was there. Before I even got there, 3 officers were there. There wasn't an issue, it was just a child doing what a child thought they needed to do. And what better way than practice the unexpected? But you know how many parents showed up? What happens? You've seen that. All I ask is, if you send your kids to our school, this Board of Education has very high expectations of us. I have high expectations of my entire team, and I think all the agencies we do work with. We are here to protect our kids, and that is the community's kids. So if you can, I know it's hard to stay away or to wait, but Facebook does not give you the best answers, but I know sometimes it's the only place to go. Please, we will get something out. Where's this lady? Where is she? Sue. Miss Parazzolo, right back there in the back. Sometimes she's already writing before we can get to her, but she can't put something out just because until we authorize it or we know the information, we can't. And the last thing before we get to question and answers, whenever we have something like this lockout that we had at the middle school, and I'll correct, it wasn't on our playground, it was away from our playground, but off property, but it's scary. We did everything so it could be as normal as possible, but that we knew exactly what was going on. We communicated that out as quickly as we could, and I think we were probably within 20 to 25 minutes. But then at the end of the day, I met, because we had to go through a procedure, and we met with some people outside because they were coming in to get their kids. I stepped out and said, this is what I have to say. Everybody was very proud and said, thank you for communicating. The hard part is I had to say we had time to communicate. But later that night, because the news ran their story on what actually happened, people went on to Facebook and said, I lied to them. This school district will not lie. We can only put out what we know at the time. And the person who put it on actually called me, and I thanked them for at least calling me, and said, I know, I heard this on the news, and it was different from what you said. And I said, well, at 2 o'clock, that's all I knew. And even then, we aren't the ones that communicate a legal situation. So when you do that, I would ask everybody to think whether you're the building principal in that situation, or the superintendent, or the board member that shows up, because our job is to be you there. But we're not doing it for one kid, we're doing it for 4,000. And we're going to take care of all 4,000 if there are one kid. So tonight's format now is we have 2 mics over here. We won't talk about individual situations, we can't do that, but there are things that we've covered you may not have been aware of. There's some questions that you may have. If we don't have the answers tonight, no problem. We'll just ask you to come to us afterwards, get your name so that we can get out and get that, or we might have somebody reach out to you. But if you have questions over what you've heard, or maybe something we didn't cover, please feel free to come forward. That's what this is for. Don't worry about the camera, just face this way, ask them, they'll take it, and then we'll go from there. But that was the purpose of tonight, to give you an overview, and now the rest of the time is for you. So please, anyone that has a question, please step up to the mic. Caitlin, it's all yours.
Do it for me.
Thank you.
Hi, Rich Reno. I'm a parent of 2 students currently in high school, and senior and freshman. They passed through the halls of the elementary school, the middle school, the middle school. Thank you very much for putting this together. When you talk about safety, it's an extremely broad topic, so this was very educational to understand everything that you're doing. But as a parent, I think for me and for most of us, that the nightmare scenarios that I appreciate what you're doing in lockdowns, they work. They're best defense in active shooter situations is not work. And one other thing that I didn't hear about, which I'd like to know what you hear, is about first aid. Right? So the reality of an active shooter situation is there's going to be injuries. The police are several minutes out. The ambulance and the paramedics aren't coming in until the building's clear. that somebody can bleed out in under 2 minutes. So what's being done in terms of first aid training for the staff and students, because the ability to have supplies and the training to use it could be a difference between the. And I'll tell you that in addition to being a parent, I'm head of security for a company of 25,000 employees. So I work on active shooter stuff every day. So I know what we're doing at work. I want to know what's happening in the schools.
We're all staring at each other. I can talk about the middle school. So I can tell you that we are actually in the process of doing an emergency response drill for a medical emergency. It wouldn't be specific necessarily to an active shooter, but we do have tourniquets in several locations in our building. We have offered CPR first aid training as part of our building safety plan at the middle school. So we do have, I'm going to just throw out a number, I probably shouldn't, but probably 15 to 20 of our staff members are CPR first aid certified. Obviously Officer West would be able to respond in the event of an emergency. All active shooter, he's stepping over victims unfortunately and going to the active shooter, but that's an area that perhaps we could use a little bit more training, and we appreciate those questions that help us to think about those. But we definitely have the first aid certifications. We do have tourniquets in the building, and I think that's where we're at this point, at least from the middle school perspective.
It kind of leads up to like the AEDs, for instance. You know, you're seeing a big push in Pennsylvania right now, based off the football injury. New York State, way above and beyond that. We've had this in place for 20 years now, Mr. Stager. And, you know, they're trained throughout the building, AED. There are, I think, over 50 of them located throughout. We follow New York State standards for that as well. They have to be readily available, trained person within 3 minutes of any school-sponsored activity, as well as for the kids being there. I kind of echo a little bit with Mr. Holloway. Thank you for bringing it, because it's actually a topic that one of our committees we've been talking is areas where we go. And I know on some conference days, some of this training's been offered, but it is one of our things in our area that I think that we'll continue to work on, and I appreciate you helping push that forward.
Can I add that we do have our senior members in their already trained in their design class for first aid and CPR.
And of course, I'll just add too, all classroom teachers and offices do have a small first aid kit in all of their locations. But I do think you bring a great question about a further larger incident that we could potentially be prepared for.
And in case the microphone for the recording didn't pick up, Principal Earl from the high school and the juniors and seniors are receiving first aid training.
I'd like to add real quick, you know, the transportation department, so we're not in the classroom setting, but we classify transportation of school bus as part of your classroom. So I just like to let everyone know that every school bus that we have has a first aid kit on the bus. And we have several drivers that are doing CPR training as we speak. We have CPR classes that are brought in to our building. We kind of go above and beyond to make sure that everything is up to date. And every single first aid box is checked every month, gone through, and make sure everything's up to date and everything is there and not missing.
In the realm of first aid as well, I think it would be important to highlight our nursing staff who do a fantastic job day in and day out. Every school has at least one nursing professional there, and we are very fortunate to be working with a very talented group who give great care for our students. That doesn't necessarily address the trauma situation, but we can certainly render care from any.
So I just one thing, I forgot the name of the program that we brought in, but it's called Stop the Bleed. Our school nurse Annette Cobb brought that in for one of our faculty meetings, and that really is focused on stopping the bleed with whatever you have in the classroom, because we know in the event of a lockdown, people aren't going to be out and about, so it really does fall on whoever that adult is there in the classroom. So we have brought in that program as well.
So at this time, other questions? Point it forward, please. We have some stock ones up here too, so, but we'd rather hear them from you.
Hi, Ashley Farina. My son is at the elementary school. I just have a quick question. I'm wondering about, you touched briefly on when we have these lockdowns, how teachers try to keep the students calm. I guess I'm just a little curious about what that communication is. I myself have kind of struggled around this conversation with my son, and when we see these things on the news, you know, I'm kind of shielding him from it, especially as a kindergartner. I don't want him to become fearful to go to school. But I, as a parent, am struggling a little bit on how to communicate this so that he does stay safe if one of these drills ever did happen. So I guess I'm curious about how it's communicated, if there's anything that can be shared with the parents, so maybe we can make sure that we're on the same page as far as that communication goes.
Thank you for your question. I think there's a few things. We try to do a mix of announced lockdown drills and some unannounced. So one, in our newsletters, we do try to notify to parents. We're going to be doing our first announced lockdown drill at this time. One thing that maybe we could do is what you're saying is what are the tips that we could share to parents on what to say. So I think that's a great idea. So thanks for bringing that forward. In regards to, you know, in a kindergarten classroom or a pre-kindergarten classroom, the teachers, they aren't saying a lot of detail about what's going on outside the walls of their classroom. They're just saying, this is a great time to play the quiet game. Let's think about a quick little game of I Spy. Do you see anything that's green? So a lot of it for the younger kids is really going to be kind of shielding them from what really could potentially be happening outside of the classroom to keep them calm. You know, the hard part is in a real situation that was referenced before, there's going to be noises, there's going to be those things. So, you know, our teachers, you know, in that moment, going through these trainings, we're trying to talk to them about what activities can you do to keep the kids quiet, to get them thinking about other things. You know, that fear is common, it's going to happen. So the most important thing is the teachers staying calm so that the students stay calm. And so if we become alarmed, then the students are going to become alarmed. So same thing on the principal aspect of it. Whenever I'm running through the drills, he's saying, oh, we did a great job, we listened to our teachers, you were calm, you were ready to do whatever your teacher said. So those are the big things that we talk about, but it really does go back to kind of deflecting for the students, going into the whys with the students, at least in elementary school. We don't go into, well, this could be because it's an active shooter situation. We're not talking about that with our youngest kids. We're talking about this is a time that you just need to go to carry out this drill, and this is what we do. We stay quiet and go from there. So it's hard to talk about some of the details because then I get into the details of what we actually do, but it's all about calmness and maintaining that calm as adults.
I'll add, I think one of the questions you're looking for is what you can do as a parent to further support that. And I would dare say probably the best thing you can do is just first and foremost reinforce to your children school is one of the very safest places you can send them, and how important it is for them to listen to their teachers, and that their teachers will do everything to keep them safe, their principal will do everything to keep them safe, the SRO. So it's a really great safe place, but reinforcing to them the absolute importance to always listen and pay attention and do exactly what your teacher is asking you to do. Thank you for the question.
Good evening. My name is Charles Cunningham, and I have two children in the district, one in the middle school and one in the high school. I think that if we look back on what happened last year in Texas, there was some confusion as it relates to an active shooter and who was in command during that time. And my question is whether or not there have been any consideration to revisit, God forbid, if there's an active shooter, who is actually in command during that time? And thank you for taking the question.
Thank you for your question, sir. You're asking if, since after that tragedy, there's been any communications between all of us people on the safety board and law enforcement. Yes, there has, extensive. I can assure you that we've gone over it and planned for it. It's a complicated situation, and I don't want to, just start airing stuff or anything like that. But I can assure you that this school district and the police department has been honored with being SROs in it. We are very determined to protect the kids and the facilities. I mean, the kids first and the staff. That's not what happened down there. Is not going to happen here as far as police response. I mean, that's plain as the day. I mean, I can assure you that the people we have involved in this, including myself, we don't act that way. We're going to go in. Our paramount responsibility is to go to the threat and try to neutralize it. What's going on beyond that is what we talked about earlier with communications and getting other people coming, calling 911, leaving the lines open, getting every agency in the whole state, I hope, coming our way if something like that happens. So does that answer your question?
Well, let me build upon that a little, okay? Because I certainly understand your question. There's a little difference between Texas and here, too. That school district has its own police force. In New York State, schools do not have their police force. So to answer the question, who's in charge, is what's known as the incident command structure, which is practiced in New York State relatively by all of our agencies, whether it's fire, whether it's police, whether it's EMS. We sort of had impromptu lockdown at Center Street, okay? And we make blunders. Here was what happened. A child called a lockdown, which is good. They thought they heard something, they called it. The building within, I'd say, 10 seconds was total lockdown, and a call was placed to the high school SRO because he heard about it, Mr. Leipen. Within, I think, 15 seconds, he was already there, going and getting into the building. That call came to us. This is where I blundered. Remember I told you they're all of our kids? I'm over on Hibbard Road. Within 3 minutes, I was at the school. Now, don't tell me how you can do that, because I broke every single law there was. And Tony, my assistant superintendent, was there because he was at the high school and he got there before me. By the time I got there, those two individuals, Officer McGrain, were already going through to see what's going on in the building. When Howard showed up, he is absolutely in charge. That's how it works. Until somebody more senior comes to manage that, or he relinquishes, he is the person, not me. Even though I showed up because it's been my training. I go to the danger. I shouldn't. Mine was, I should have been staying someplace away, waiting for them to tell me what they need me to do. Right? By the time they had already gone through most of the building, 3 more officers had showed up. That's how the structure works. And of those officers, one was a sheriff's officer, one was a trooper. They didn't come in and take control, but what they did is they started taking direction. They had already seen that within under a minute, they had ruled that there was nothing there, but we went through the whole process. And then they turned it over. So what happens, I think what Chief Sui is saying, is the first agency's there until a different structure is either communicated or relinquished. That's how the most agencies across New York will work. Before we had SROs, where I was a principal at Central Square, we had a trooper's barracks less than a mile away. So guess who was usually in charge? Trooper would come in, and anybody else that responded, they'd take over. If it was a fire, if Town and Country got there before Horseheads and it was in Center Street, they would be in charge unless they turned it over and relinquished. That's how that structure works. So it's different in each state, each locality, but I can't criticize anything that went there, but I can say our practice is what we would expect. And then, I hate to say it, we won't talk a lot about active shooter tonight, because at the end of this, we're going to tell you, that's probably one we're going to come back on, because I hate to say it, we could talk 2 or 3 hours on it. Here's one of the things, just so that you know, on active shooters. Our staff, 4 years ago, went through a full conference day of active shooter. We even simulated it. The hard part is, how do you do that with kids? Because when we did it with staff, I had 15 to 30 staff out of 300 coming out that were not as prepared for what happens. And that was with all county agencies. Because the hard part, like you heard before, their goal is nothing but to go and negate the threat. It doesn't matter what has happened. Their goal is to push past it, negate the threat, and then retract and take care of the situation. That's the hard part. And I don't know, it might be something we need to do as a community in the summer, because it does help all of our agencies to practice. We open our district up to the SWAT teams and everything. State troopers come here. There's a reason we do that. We want them to know our buildings better than anybody else. Because if something ever did happen, which we try to prevent, they know exactly what our facilities are like, what they're going to do. And when you come to an open house later this year, you'll start seeing at the high school the design of our hallways so that people can progress and still be safe. Same for our students. So I hope that helped clarify it a little bit more of how it is, who's in control. And I would tell you, my faith is that whether it's the Horseheads Police Department, the Chemung County Sheriffs, or the troopers, they're going to come in and command the attention and take care of the issue. And here's the thing, they end up telling us exactly what we can do. And we can't do anything without them instructing us at that point. That's the hard part, because in the community, guess where all the parents want to go? Sort of like what we learned from Uvalde, right there. They're going to ask us to tell you point blank, stay the hell away. Not because they don't want you there, but it adds to the issue. And guess what? You're not going to, because it's your child there, but you're not going to get near either. That's the hard part, and that diverts resources. So we will probably have another one we're looking at, how do we do something like that so that we can focus on some key things. We know active shooter is one of high interest. We know that cyber bullying, cyber security is another one. But we're probably going to ask you just before we finish up, are there any other topics? And then we're going to try each semester to maybe develop one of these presentations. So hopefully that helped.
Chief Sue, you got an empty chair down there next to you. Why don't you invite one of your SROs to come join you for the presentation if you get any questions.
I'd like to add to Dr. Douglas about a unified command. That way, not a particular agency is in charge. You have a unified command, all the agencies get together, discuss the plan. There's a lot of different stakeholders that are involved in the school district and outside the school district, Department of Transportation example. And all these have to be considered. So a unified command, which he explained how New York State has developed, is very beneficial, and it's also called the incident command system also. So I totally agree how we've done things here and how we will proceed to do it.
Other questions? Peyton, do you have any just in case?
Dr. Douglas, may I speak?
Oh, sure.
I'm Officer McGrain with the Horseheads Police Department. I have about, 14 years just as an SRO. I'd like to just hit on a topic that this gentleman here asked. Sir, I can tell you that in New York State, or the Horseheads Police Department, Chemung County Sheriffs, or State Police, we go to the threat. We either eliminate the threat or the threat eliminates us. And then everybody, all the other officers behind me will continue to go to that threat until it's eliminated. I can't talk on Texas. That's how we do it in New York State. That's how it would be handled if your son, daughter were in the school. I would go, my officers would go, we'd eliminate the threat or be eliminated, and there would be a continuous amount of officers until that threat is eliminated. Does that answer your question?
Yes. My sole question was, if you all remember, throughout the national news, the issue was, it appeared that there was some level of confusion as to who was actually in the van during the incident.
So,
that was the concern that I had, whether or not that had been revisited in light of what we heard throughout the national discourse regarding what happened.
so I can hit on that. If I'm at Center Street, if an incident happened at Center Street, I'm in control until either, like I said, the threat is eliminated, or I'm eliminated, or until a supervisor gets on scene. If it's an active shooter, Chief Suey is going to be in charge, but he's going to be looking at me and the other SROs, what's going on, and he's going to be making decisions from there. But he in no terms would tell us to stop and not go in and save your kids. I can tell you that, I can promise you that, myself or any of these officers, we're going to continue to go into that classroom, that school to save your children.
Other questions? Or would you like one of our stock ones? Go ahead, Ms. DeFilippo.
So I hear sometimes that there might be metal detectors. So you hear of metal detectors in other schools. So tell me, how much value do you think metal detectors might add to our school safety? I'm interested in any perspective from an administrator, from a chief, anybody who might have thoughts about that.
I gave a good answer in our meeting for that,
On the metal detectors? Well, it's something that, as one of our committees, and we were working, part of that conversation is that's something we evaluate at times when we feel that threat's coming up, like many things that we put together. And as I mentioned earlier, we're never done. We're always working on it. Something changes, we drill different things. And the question at that time was not truly seeing that threat at that time. Situations change a little bit, our geographics, where we're at. And the reality is, it could change on that, but I guess a straight answer on it was the one you were mentioning too. They're going to want to get stuff in. They can get it in. We do have that single point entry. But currently at that time, we felt that the threat would change, and whether we bring it up, and we felt we had the need, then that'd be something we'd bring on, because we'd never close our eyes.
So if a student thinks a classmate has a weapon, what would you like that student to do? If a student thinks a classmate has a weapon, what would you like that student to do?
If a student at the elementary or at the high school thinks that another student has a weapon, they need to contact their teacher or an adult as soon as possible. That adult needs to contact the SRO or the principal as soon as possible, and we'll deal with it.
So I can give you a specific example at the middle school that after we just dismissed the classes, we had a backpack that was left in one of our bathrooms. Student came to report that they thought that there was a knife in that backpack. They thought they saw a knife. So Officer West, Mr. Hefner and I, we worked on that, and within probably 4 to 5 minutes, Officer West was able to track the kid that left that backpack back to a classroom. We were able to call that kid in, search the bag, question the student. Thankfully, there was no knife that was found, but when those things are reported, we're acting within seconds. We're on cameras, we can follow kids all throughout our building, and we're going to address that immediately. So those are not things that, we can get to that later. That's something, everything drops and we take care of that immediately.
If I can, that's sort of like the safe school line. We have calls regularly on that safe school line that might be something similar, like they got off a bus and, oh, this child showed me something. What happens is, where that goes is that always comes to me, but it also comes to my assistant superintendent or communication specialist in case all of a sudden I'm up in the top of Catlin and can't get a signal or anything. But what happens is as soon as it comes in, if they give us the information where and we do appreciate this, and I want to make sure it's clear, please, at all times, if you can, don't do it anonymously. Give us your name, your phone number. You will immediately get a call back from one of us to try to get the specific details. Again, we aren't going to spread your name around about it. It's only if we have a legal situation eventually that we'd have to do that. But we try to keep that anonymity as much as possible with confidentiality as best we can. But the reason why we ask to do that is because we get a clearer picture, and then I know the time, the date, the location, where. And immediately it could be a Saturday night, and we get a call. Chris Earl has gotten calls before. Some of my other principals have gotten the same call. This child here, Facebook, this is what's said, this is what was sent in. And just because it's a weekend, we don't not work. It's immediate, and then we follow through until they can clear the report. Just like we have hoax threats, once the law enforcement gets involved, say there's a threat, they will tell us whether it's credible or not. If they deem it not credible, there's a certain path. But if they deem it credible, you're going to see a major escalation in response. And that is all from either the Safe School line or during the day, we have kids that get scared and say, I think I saw this. Whether they think they saw it or not, this goes to the Virginia issue. If it's seen, the child's going to be interviewed, questioned, and searched right up to that point. And we always have to be careful about that because sometimes people want to play a game against somebody else. But in that situation, we'll explain it to the parents. Once the complaint was made, we've got to go through it and address it. Whether it's the Safe School line in here, I think that's an excellent question. Get them to an adult as soon as possible. If an adult does not get it up to chain of command immediately, we'll address that because then it becomes a personnel issue. I will tell you, I've been here 8 years. I haven't had a single personnel issue when it comes to safety. And I appreciate that because everybody looks out for each other. So I hope that helps. Caitlin?
So I think a lot of parents who may be in the audience or at home, they probably have an idea of what the school day looks like for an SRO at the secondary level. SROs in our elementary schools, so that's new. So tell me, what does a day look like for an SRO in an elementary school?
Thank you for that question. I started 4 years ago as your first SRO in the elementary schools, and we've progressed this year to have an SRO in every elementary school, which is great for this community. Throughout the day, not only do we work along with administrators and the staff to make sure the kids are safe, we assist them in learning and teaching the kids. We might go into the classroom to sit to help either teach or watch some kids and their behaviors. We have programs that we work with kids so that they actually learn either better. Like I just started one in Center Street with the principal. I'm going to have some students come in. I'm going to work with them with flashcards because they see me as kind of like their hero, so they get to be able to do flashcards with me. We're hoping that gets these students to learn a little bit better and to be happier to learn math. We interact in recess, we interact in lunch, make sure things are safe. We're part of the safety team. We walk around the school and make sure it's safe. We make sure the doors are locked. We make sure that the fire extinguisher, everything's working, the camera system's working. That's one thing we haven't hit on tonight, that the school has an excellent camera system throughout the whole school district. Top notch, very, very elite camera system that helps not only us out, but the teachers and staffs out. We help out in gym. There's reading programs. We do a lot of things. It's just not standing, walking halls, and being security. It's actually getting involved in the kids, get the kids to like us, to get the kids to understand that we are there for them, not only in safety, but being part of their life. A lot of our kids with broken homes, they don't have a father or a mother connection, And sometimes I get that connection with some of those kids because their dad's not in the home. And I don't take that lightly. I really do care about the kids. All my officers here care about the kids, and we go back and forth and we talk and try to make different programs and how we can help with the staff and administration. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
I wanted to add one thing to that. So I think the wonderful things that our SROs do is by doing all those proactive pieces, getting to know all of the students, getting to know their families, getting to know the situations in the building. When we do get to a tricky situation where maybe we need to investigate something, we then, Officer McGrain, I remember specifically one time, he's like, I can tell the student's a little bit off today because I know what their norm is. I can tell by looking at their eyes. I can tell by looking at their facial expressions. So when we get to those tougher situations, they have the trained eye to be taking some of those cues too. So having that input and information is so helpful when you do get to those situations where having that other eye and input is helpful. So it's the proactive helps when you get into those tough situations.
Mike, you want to talk a little bit about how we prepare for safety issues that might be at a larger event like the stadium?
So we have talked a little bit, locking buildings down during the day, and we have a lot of activities at night. So part of that on our schedule, working with whatever the activities could be. It could be graduation. You know, we've had a tremendous turnout for the football games on Friday night. We've had as many as 5,000 people at a game, and that's a major undertaking, keeping everyone just safe at that game. Not only the spectators, just traveling, coming out from that coordination. We work with our coalition, with the police department, BRSRs, SRO officers, as well as the local police department. They know they're part of the community, so we work out what we're going to do for securing it for that night, how we're going to deal with traffic flow, as well as supervision at these athletic events. It could be a play, it could be any extracurricular activity. So looking at that security, we evaluate what they're going to be there. There's always a supervisor on. There's always going to be a staff member on for any time we bring anyone into the buildings, and they have certain protocols, and those numbers are adjusted on the event, what we expect are going to be there. And it can be as simple as communicating with two-way radios, but we assess them for each event we're going to have off that calendar. And that's done weekly and daily. It changes every day for events.
So I think we got about time for one more. Anybody else in the audience have a question you might like to ask? Oh, good.
Hi, I'm Tulsa. I have 2 kids in the district. I'm just nuclear. There's a lot of World War talk right now. What's the name? There's billboards all over that talk about it. There's commercials. If something happens and our kids are at school, what is the
Actually, we're going back to when I know Town Supervisor Fisher was in school. Some of those issues are hard because we haven't been updated by Homeland Security whether there's a threat level or concern. At this time, there isn't one. But when you saw some of the drills, how to stay sort of like weather-related drills, it goes back to the civil defense drills is what we have. And that's the same as bad weather drills. It's basically going into interior walls. It's getting down low. It's basically for glass and so forth. That would be the drill that's already in place because that's a lot of the times the kids as they go up in age start to see that as part of the curriculum base where they're learning about World War I, World War II, some of the things that happen in school. When I was in school, you had to get under your desk. What's the desk going to protect you from? It's more the building and the structure, and that's what we would end up purposely drilling at this point. It hasn't changed from that point of view. Anything that you guys know from the safety teams? And
No, I think you spoke well.
yeah, I will tell you, just from my background, being a principal, and I grew up in Oswego, New York, Central Square, right next to a nuclear power plant, actually 4 of them. there is a different heightened sense of awareness there versus types of nuclear drills. That's more evacuation drills where you have to get outside of a 35 mile radius. We're actually in the southern tier, if you look at strategic maps, we're actually in a sort of a nice area that this is not necessarily one of the major military hubs areas. That's one of the things I would say administratively we'd look at. Sikorsky is no longer here. There's really no military issue in this immediate area. That would be the best thing that I'd say versus like if we were near Buffalo Air Base, which is a major air base, and Fort Drum, which has a different protocol. So I hope that helps a little, but it does help me at night because I deal with this all the time with an 8th grader, especially who's very interested in World War II, and you see it on the TV. I think one of the hard parts goes back to the question about kindergarten. We try to keep the innocence of the students as long as we can, but social media, our media in general, is not going to keep it, so there are times where you're going to have to open up and have those discussions. Like with lockdown drills for my wife, one day she was helping in 2nd grade in Mr. Sumner's class, and Principal Skepchura just by said, oh, we're about to do our first lockdown drill. So my wife's in there, I'm near the class watching, I'm like, I'm getting the heck out of here right now because she's gonna melt down. And I went out to watch, but I did that twofold, and it's something you may not experience. But the reason I did it is because she went through it, and I wish I could give you all that chance, but the kids led her through that in 2nd grade. The innocence was still there, but sometimes they were saying, we do this so that somebody can't hurt us. We need to be quiet. And they actually took my wife by the hand and put her down into the corner and said, you gotta sit down and be quiet. And I don't think that was even possible, but when I got home, she was not quiet. But her take was, why do we even have to do this? Why should kids have to do that? And we have to say that our world has always changed, and it's ever going to evolve. The best thing we can do is shelter them as long as possible, but make sure they're appropriately trained to handle the situation. And I can tell you, most of our kids, as they go up through to middle school, if they're out in the world and something happens, innately, they're gonna hear it and they're gonna know. I gotta do this, get out of the way, I gotta get to a safe place, I gotta protect myself. And you know what, if you're along for the ride, you may be panicking. This is the miracle of constant training. They're gonna tell you, you're coming with me. They do it to each other all the time. We see it at the high school. If we go into a lockdown and kids don't know what to do, other kids will gravitate, take the other person and say, come. Even if they have to lock themselves into a bathroom. That's what training does. That's what safety does in discussions. So please, I encourage you, when you feel it's right, and that's what we try to do, is leave it up to you, have those discussions with your kids. There are so many things we wanted to try to target about an hour and a half. I think we're there at this point. If you do have any questions, please, up here, hcsdinfo@horseheads.com goes to that lovely person right over there, Miss Sue Perizzolo. Any question, any complaint, because I get those too. But when it comes to her, she sends it on to me, and she now knows, send it on to me with a phone number. I might not be able to get back to you right away, but either I will get back to you, Tony will get back to you, or one of my administrators will. We pride ourselves on whether it's a good conversation or a bad conversation, we're still going to have it. And then hopefully at the end, we still have a conversation. So if you have something or something we didn't cover tonight, you're also welcome to come out to our board meetings at any time. Our board meetings are usually published. We will be putting out a new flyer at the beginning of next year that will have all the information pretty much straightforward where it's going to be. We encourage you, honestly, that's really our true engagement, but we're also trying to do some of these items because this is information important to you. So without further ado, I want to thank our panel, I want to thank our Board of Education, our SROs, our administrators that are here tonight, as well as our other elected officials and also our volunteer officials that take care of our community and most importantly, our schools and our students. Thank you for coming out on behalf of all of us. Have a good night.